Welcome, everyone. It's 1923, so 7:23 is our start time in honor of the very beginning 100 years ago of the Ellensburg Rodeo. So 1923, we are beginning. So welcome. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Welcome to the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the familiar faces that have all come back for the third of our speaker series now. We really do appreciate the turnout and the support and the people showing up each month for this. Please keep doing it as we build to all the way through August, getting ready for Labor Day and the 100th anniversary of the Ellensburg Rodeo. I'm looking around. There are still a couple seats if you are interested. Middle of rows here, middle of rows here. So find a spot if you feel like going to the middle of the rows, or find a spot there. There are some seats still available. I'm going to speak for just a minute, but I'm going to introduce our two speakers for tonight and ask them to come forward. Joel, want to come forward? Joel Smith, past Ellensburg Rodeo president, member of the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame, and past member of the concert director. So well qualified for tonight. Yep. And Carrie Clift, will you come forward also? Thank you. Current concert director, all of those things. I'll introduce our format for the evening. Basically, the two gentlemen up here will share their experience in specifically about music and the culture, popular culture, and the effect on the rodeo. Telling some stories of their experiences through the years of organizing the concerts that have taken place at the Ellensburg Rodeo. It will also be a time for you to share stories also. So I will be wandering around when we get to that point with the wireless microphone. Definitely welcome you if you have connections and stories of your experiences at the rodeo. Please share those. I'll bring the microphone to you at the appropriate time. When we get to that point of sharing, I'll just ask you to introduce yourself, and then if you've got stories to share, you are an important part of this presentation also. So please feel free to share. I will begin with a story myself. Is that all right? Okay. Concert series, important for me. 1997. I had been trying to date Janelle Eaton for quite a while. Okay. She was a student. Okay. She was not all that particularly interested in dating me. I was very interested. She was not all that much. So through the whole college experiences, we had known each other, been friends for a while. I was interested in doing something more than that. And it was kind of a no through most of that summer. However, I did convince her to go, I believe 1997 was the Chris Ledoux concert. Okay. So Chris Ledoux was kind of our first official date. Yep, at the Ellensburg Rodeo. And then I left and went to college in Ireland for a year. So immediately following Labor Day. So the concert series for Ellensburg will always have a special place in my heart because it was the convinced Janelle to go on a date with me. Okay. Real quickly, just introducing the building one more time. There are restrooms and drinking fountains down the hall. So if any time you guys take care of those needs, and then the bar will be open during the speaker series also. I think with that, Joel, you ready?
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. I'm going to take it back in history a little bit tonight and kind of go where the music started. And basically, it started with the Yakima Nation and its bands. And from the onset and probably prior to the first rodeo, in a powwow situation, the Yakima bands and the Yakima Nation came to that area up there by Craig's Hill, and it was music and dancing and games. In any way, that carries on to today, and it's really a proud thing to say that that's where the music started at the Ellensburg Rodeo. The next group that came about was started in 1929. It was called the Ellensburg Cowboy Band, Ellensburg Rodeo Cowboy Band. I've seen it written different ways, but at any rate, it began in 1929, and it was directed by a guy, I can't remember his name right now, but he was the public schools music director. And anyway, here it is. It was organized by a guy named Lo Bolliard. And anyway, he was a local baker, and that's how the cowboy band got started. From 1934 to 1943, my dad, in 1934, he was 17 years old, became the director of the cowboy band. And the cowboy band had about 50 members from the community. And his band was through to 1943, and then I don't know if there was a rodeo in 44 or not. I couldn't get that fact down. But anyway, my dad's father was also in the band. So there was a lot of participation from the community in that band. And they played and marched in the parade, and they played between events, and during the grand entry they played. There was actually a bandstand that the director stood in, and the band played on the arena floor. And the last of the history that I found in 1950 was kind of the end of the existence of the cowboy band. And the last director of the band was a guy named Bert Christensen, who was a professor of music at Central. And many of the music professors were involved in that band, and they were for a stretch there up until 1950. So that's really kind of where music in the arena started, was with the Yakima Nation, the Ellensburg Cowboy Band. And then it went into kind of a silence. It wasn't really a silence, but there wasn't a whole lot of music. Do you remember the horn speakers that you used to go to events and you couldn't hear a dang thing? Well, that's what we were doing in the rodeo up until about 1986. And a guy named Gogi Grant came to Ellensburg. And it changed music in the rodeo industry all over the country. And he brought with him amplifiers and speakers, and you could hear. But also, he had music on his computer that he'd run through the periods of, when things weren't going so quick. And Gogi was a character, I mean, he started the whole rock and roll and country rock music in the rodeo arenas. And Gogi was around until about 1997. And a guy named Chuck Lopman and now his son, Austin, are doing the music. And they came a couple of years after Gogi disappeared. And I mean disappeared. Anyway, he was a character. Chuck Lopman's a professional. And the music that you hear today is spirited in Gogi's memory. So anyway, I had the opportunity to get involved in the concert series that started. The first two concerts, the Johnny Cash and June Cash concert, was in when was it? It was 1984. And John Drinkwater was a Central Washington Student Activities Director, and he put on concerts at Central and whatnot, and he did the Johnny Cash concert into the old grandstand from the track. There used to be a track there. Most of you remember that, I'm sure. But anyway, he continued on and did a Lee Greenwood and Sylvia concert the following year. And then all of a sudden, they had a pro wrestling experience. And I was at a rodeo board meeting, and we said, no, we just can't do any more pro wrestling. Let's go into this concert business and just see how it works. So we got a contract with a little lady from one of the big music producing companies, and she signed up John Schneider of Dukes of Hazzard fame and Tanya Tucker, who opened for him. And that was our first concert that was actually produced by and promoted by the Ellensburg Rodeo Board. And that went on for several years, and actually about 13 years, counting the first one. And ended with the Bellamy Brothers in 1999. Anyway, some of the things if anybody has any memories of those concerts or the cowboy band and that sort of thing, why, just Daniel's got a mic, and we'd love to share that kind of information. It's kind of exciting to hear some of your stories. But there were a lot of people, some of them in this room tonight, that were very critical parts of producing those rodeos. And they started the first 3 or 4 years on a Saturday night. And Carrie, you can back me up on this. If you're starting a rodeo on Friday, Saturday at 1 o'clock, Sunday, Monday, and you want to put on a concert in the arena on Saturday night, it was really, really a difficult task. First of all, Ward Group provided the trailers. We'd bring in 5 or 6 trailers and pull them into the arena after we were chasing all the cowboys and stuff out of the arena and trying to get John Fitter would come in with his load of plywood in the back of his pickup and deck all the trailers. And then the volunteers were incredible, the top hands. And well, I'll get to him, okay, Rick? But you're absolutely right. Estelle Johnson and her family were just incredible. I mean, in the top hands, they came in, they moved all the sound and light equipment up, and those first several years we used straw bales, and that was a lot of labor, putting them out first of all and then picking them up at the end. Matter of fact, I'll share a story about that. There's a guy that helped all the time, Jim Davidson. He was a really fun guy to work with. Anything you asked him to do, he would do. Well, I left a little early, which was about 2:30 in the morning, and went home. And I got a call about 6 in the morning from Ken McRae, who was the arena director. And he says, "You better get your behind in here right away." And I said, "Why is that?" And he says, "We've got a fire going on in the middle of the arena." I said, "Well, what happened?" He says, "I don't know, but you better get in here in a hurry." Well, what Jim did, bless his heart, he took all that residue from those straw bales, raked them into the middle of the arena, and lit them up. What a good way to get rid of the straw, right? So anyway, we got that solved, and slack went off at 7 a.m., so everything worked out all right. But bless his heart, he had a good idea, but that fire just wouldn't burn, But there were a lot of other people. Rick just mentioned Lamont Sinclair. He was an amazing guy. What he did and provided for us was amazing. He found out from the contracts and the riders what was necessary for power, both for the sound equipment and the instruments and the lighting. And on the contracts, it specifies what you're supposed to supply for power. Well, he put it all together. He created this big snake that we pulled from someplace back behind Section JJ and set it all up underneath the trailers. And I remember I thanked him one year. I said, "Geez, you and your wife I got front row seats for you." And I looked out there, and there was no Levon. And I thought, shoot. But his wife, Etta, was there. I said, "Etta, where's Levon?" "Under the trailer." I said, "What's he doing under the trailer?" "He's monitoring the output of the sound." So, the volunteers were tremendous. The Subert family did all the... There's a rider comes with all these contracts, right, Carrie? And how many, no red M&Ms kind of deal. But it was food and drinks, and the Suberts supplied all the food and did a remarkable job, because there were some people that just couldn't eat beans, and there were some people that couldn't eat meat, but they did a remarkable job. And there was another thing in the rider about transportation, and my wife Marie volunteered to be the taxi driver, which would take entertainers or band members or production people, sound and lights, would take them to the laundry or whatever needed to be done. But a lot of great volunteers, and Jim Davidson was one of the very special ones, and I don't mean to make fun of him, but because I thought it was probably a pretty good idea, but that darn fire wouldn't burn. Basically, we went from straw bales after that incident. John Drinkwater, who was working at the gorge at the time, said that, if you will bring us, we used to have all these panels we'd use for rodeo, and paneling up livestock and that sort of thing, and contestant livestock and whatnot. And anyway, he said, if you bring down these panels on these certain concerts that they needed crowd control on, and you can imagine what those concerts were like, you can have all these chairs. They were going to replace all the chairs. And so Scott Rep put all this together because John called Scott, and Scott loaded up horse trailers and pickups and down to we took the panels down for this concert and picked up all the chairs. And you may have seen them probably in many garages around town. There's still used in the I think they're still used in the box seats and whatnot. They're in a trailer, but Jazz in the Valley's used them. Everybody's used them. There's been a great thing that happened. I have one more little story to tell you about the concert. Our sound and light guy was from Tri-Cities. I can't remember his name right now, but he was really a good guy, and I don't remember exactly what concert it was, but anyway, he said, well, where do you want these lights? And we pointed up. We used to play into the northwest corner. The stage was sort of out in the middle, but it played the concert into the northwest corner. And he says, well, where's the operators? I said, what do you mean? He says, well, you need to have operators for the lights, these spotlights. And I said, well, didn't you bring them? And he says, no, you provide the lighting technicians. Brad Fitter, Kenny Peterson. Please come and see the front stage. Kenny and Brad did the lights that night. It was hilarious. The lights were all over the place. They were shining on Craig's Hill and the Legion Hall. And finally I went up and I told him, I said, just concentrate on just the entertainer. Just whoever's singing. And then if he moves, just move a little bit. You don't have to go up too high. Anyway, great troopers, those two guys. They made it happen, and we had Ellensburg's first light show. Anybody remember the concerts very well? Anybody go to the concerts? Yeah, I see Estelle shaking her head because she was there at 6 in the morning. She and her family were there at 6 in the morning and left at 2 or 3 in the morning. That's right, 4 o'clock in the morning. But anyway, what a great experience. One other thing I'd like to talk about just a little bit is Behind the Chutes, Carrie. Behind the Chutes basically started as a beer hall in a concrete block building. It was really hot because we had all this space, and it was hotter in the tent than it was in the brick building. So nobody went in there, and they decided let's build a beer garden out there, and so we did. And anyway, the things started to get kind of popular, and then in the first year, the board hired a band called the Twang Babies. We had them twice, didn't we, Mary? Back to back, the Twang Babies. And we all had no idea what we were doing. But it turned out pretty fun, and the Twang Babies played, and they actually played on the gravel, and people were dancing in the gravel. It was really dusty in there, but it was alive, and their beer was flowing. But the Twang Babies played for a couple of years, and then we started to bring in other bands, and it's the long history of Behind the Chutes, which Kerry is carrying on that tradition, and he's going to get to that part pretty soon too. But anybody have any memories from the Behind the Chutes? Please share, Michael.
Mike, I'm going to bring you the microphone.
I talked to Wayne Hunt a couple weeks ago, and he wanted to be here tonight and couldn't, so he sent me a story. And this is about how the Southeast Grandstands eventually became the stage. But you remember the old Southeast Grandstands, the old wooden grandstands were behind Section 9. And so this is from Wayne. He said, here's a little info on removal of the old grandstands, as well as the part my band had in the beginning of live music Behind the Chutes. Joel Smith and Rick Cole and others could fill in the dates better than I, but here goes. The oldest grandstands in the late 1980s were at the southeast corner of the arena. They were the old-style uncovered wood bleachers. I'm sure some of you remember those. Presently, there is larger and more modern uncovered aluminum seating where ticket holders can enjoy an alcoholic beverage while enjoying the show. In the late 1980s, my brother Ken and I were approached about salvaging and removing the old grandstands by one of the county commissioners, who should probably remain nameless for this story. Let's just say that back then it was easier to do handshake business. My dad was on the fair board at the time and may have had something to do with Ken and I being contacted. I'm just saying. Anyway, we were asked about doing salvage and removal of the old bleachers, told we must be licensed and bonded, and were we interested? Well, we had to say no, that we couldn't be licensed and bonded, but otherwise we could certainly do it. Answer was, well, you have 30 days to get licensed and bonded. What if you just completed the job before the 30 days was up? This sounds like a free market transaction to me. So we paid a very nominal sum to the county, took our 2-ton Ford stock truck, a pickup, and an old power wagon with a winch and a bunch of tools and went to work. All good. That old lumber came in very handy around our ranches, served to build a couple of decks, and our old friend, rodeo board member and favorite veterinarian Dr. Ken McCrae, insisted on buying some of the lumber for his ranch use. Some would even stayed at the Ellensburg Rodeo grounds, which leads to the connection between that and the early Behind the Chutes. I'm pretty sure it was around that time, this is late 1980s, that Joel Smith contacted me about bringing the band I was in at the time. This was the Impellers. The name of the band was the Impellers. Wayne, of course, was the co-founder of the Greasewood City Ramblers and played in many country rock bands here in the latter decades of the 20th century. Joel Smith contacted me about bringing the band I was in at the time to play in the new Tavern Dance Hall area they were building Behind the Chutes. He also wanted input on the construction of a bandstand. A friend of our band from up in the Tiana way was a carpenter, and he took on the project along with myself and some band members who volunteered to assist. Joel was also rounded up helpers, as I remember. We framed that bandstand with the heavy-duty beams salvaged from the old southeast grandstands. And we used some of the lighter salvage lumber as well. The rodeo board took care of the rest. It worked well, and we, the Impellers, that's the name of the band, broke it in, playing that year Behind the Chutes and one or two more. I can't say enough about how good it was to work with Joel on our contracts, perks, and all that the gig involved. His dedication to the Ellensburg Rodeo for years and now to the Hall of Fame is something that I've always admired, and the opportunity to be part of it from time to time is something I'm very proud of. It's a tradition started when my grandpa, Floyd Miner Sr., helped with the construction of the grounds many years ago. My mom, Peggy Minor Hunt, was Princess and performed there as a specialty trick rider. My Aunt BJ and Sister Chris were royalty, and so many of my minor cousins have been involved as contestants.
That's a great story, Mike. Yeah. Well, after the Twang Babies left, of course, we had to go local. And the Impellers were the country rock band at the time, and we were gracious to have them more than once. Anyway, that was kind of the end of the concert series for me. And Kerry's brought it back to life, and bless his heart, you know, it's a risky business, but he's got it going on.
Well, thank you, Joe. So, looking at this, 1998 was the last concert, right? Bellamy, 99. So, Chris Ledoux played in 97 and 98. I moved here in 97 and attended that Chris Ledoux concert with my wife, Bridget. We were just dating at the time. So, this is, how this all ties in is pretty cool. So, fast forward almost 20 years, and why did we decide to bring the concerts back? Brought the idea to the board, and I think Rick Cole can attest to this. They said, no way and that we want to do this again. And I'm like, well, here's my idea. So that year, I was assigned the Go Buckle Club, and I wanted to, the Go Buckle Club had a summer party, and the summer party was kind of dying. And I'm like, let's create a party like they do in Vegas. How many have been to the Las Vegas National Finals Rodeo in here? Good. How about the concert the Wednesday night before, the kickoff concert? If you don't get it, you got to do that. It is awesome. So they do a kickoff concert Wednesday night, Fremont Street, and then roll right into the round one NFR. So the idea was going to take that energy and recreate it here in Ellensburg, and also take that Gold Buckle summer party that we used to have and create that for our Gold Buckle members and sponsors. So not having a lot of history, because Joel and I hadn't been on the board together, didn't know how to book an artist. I'm like, okay, so how hard can this be, right? So going through my little list of people who to book, and I'm like, you know, Chris Ledoux did a great job in Ellensburg. Ned Ledoux was coming out. It was getting popular. His picture is right up in the middle there. So I didn't know that you were supposed to go through a booking agent, so I just decided to Facebook Messenger Ned Ledoux and asked him, hey, Ned, would you like to play at Ellensburg Rodeo? We're wanting to bring the concerts back. And he did respond. He goes, well, I would love to. And he was actually here, you know, back when Chris was playing. He was the drummer, I think, in those years. And but he says he steered me towards his agent in Nashville and said, okay, you got to work out the details. You know, what it costs, the money, and all that fun stuff. So, naive myself, I call the agent, and I said, okay, we haven't done these concerts in almost 20 years. We want to bring them back, but we don't have much money because some of the board members don't want to do this. So, but we got to make money on this thing. So, anyway, they weren't really excited about what my budget was, and for about a month, and this story is tooth to the T. I was on my way to Denver Stock Show. I show cattle. My daughter and I and wife show cattle down there every year. And we were going through Casey, Wyoming, heading through a snowstorm, and on the radio, and that's where Chris Ledoux, Ned Ledoux are from. And right then, a Chris Ledoux song came on the radio. Weird, right? And so I called the agent in Nashville, and I said, do you know what I'm doing right now? And he says, well, no. And I said, well, I'm heading on the way to the Denver Stock Show in a snowstorm. And I said, can you just please cut me a deal for Ned Ledoux? And it was, I think, $10,000, what it was, and they were 120 or whatever. And I'm like, let's make this deal. Let's bring these concerts back and make it fun and honor Chris Ledoux, since he was one of our last concerts, and bring Ned back. And he says, all right, I'll call you back. 10 minutes later, calls me, and we signed. I actually did the deal on the road on the way to Denver Stock Show. So that was, but I thought it was a good tie into what Joel had ended in a sense with Chris. So, booking these artists is a challenge, and I'm gonna go through a couple of these examples. So the next year, well, let's go into that concert that year. So Slack ran a little bit long, and so we started a little late. So, which I think it was an hour and a half or two maybe, but we got going, and I was behind the stage with Ned, and he was extremely nervous. And he goes, "Hey, can I have a beer?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I grab him a beer, and he chugs a beer, and I'm like, "What are you nervous about?" And he goes, "Well, there's a lot of expectations because of my dad playing here X amount, and he was, just that heritage that he was scared about." And but it was fun talking to his band because they'd remembered playing here. It was KW Turnbull and all those guys they'd played here, 18 years prior, and the Western Underground Band, yep. And they were just ecstatic to be here. So we get everything cleaned up, and thank God for the top ends. How many top ends do we have in here? Look at all these guys. If we can, to get this thing set up in the arena with the stage was crazy, and then the cleanup. Buddy Short, top end. What time was it, Buddy? 4 a.m. when we got done cleaning up that first year? I think Buddy and I were sitting there, and we're like, "Do you think anybody else in the world's doing this right about now?" And like, no, but it was, we made good money that year. Yeah, it was a good kickoff, and so the next year we decided I better use an agent instead of doing this thing via Facebook Messenger. So I got an agent. We were ready to set right before the coronation banquet to announce Tracy Bird as an artist. The day before the banquet, Tracy had to cancel, and I'm like, ugh. So that was my first experience of canceling, which there is more. So then we were able to get Joe Diffie, Joe Diffie had actually played here when Joel had him. I don't know what year it was, 80-something, or late 80s, probably 89, or maybe 94. But anyway, so we were able to have Joe, one of Joe's last concerts, actually, that he did, and before he passed away. So that concert was a real hit. Joe's quite a character, just a real guy. And so that next year, we started using the agent again, and wasn't sure what our community wanted, old country, new country. So let's cross it up a little bit. So we worked with Walla Walla Rodeo and Puyallup, and we routed a guy named Russell Dickerson, which was a new upcomer. Personally, I didn't like his music, but that's just me. So, but sometimes you got to take your personal choices out of this. But so we brought him because we got him at a good price. But then I wanted to bring a little old country back into it as an opener, and that's where Waylon's grandson, Wade Jennings, played that evening. So, and this is Waylon's oldest grandson, so he actually toured with Waylon when he was a kid, and he brought a lot of that old country music, and the stories of Way was just amazing. His band was David Allen Coe's band, so they came in and they actually unloaded in a little white van, and the smoke came out like Cheech and Chong. So it was I don't know, my wife probably has a better what they were smoking in the gold buckle room that we'd had to ask them, please not do that. But they were quite the characters. So that was a good year. So the next year we get to January 25th, 2020, and we announce. So we're at the coronation banquet, very special night. My daughter got the queen, so that was great. And we announced David Lee Murphy that night, and we're all set to go, right? In 2020, and then it went church. So 60 days later, everything came to a halt. We didn't have a rodeo that year. Still had David Lee Murphy signed to play in 2021. And Monday before the concert, so the concert's on Thursday night, right? Monday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was driving back from Quincy, Washington, and I got a call from my agent. David Lee Murphy came down with an illness and cannot play your guys' rodeo this year. And I said, what? I'm like, is he dead? I mean, can he walk? Can he sing? I mean, Bring him on. I mean, well, come to find out, he did have COVID and couldn't make the concert. And I said, okay, can you sing? Can we still get him here? Because I didn't want to cancel the concert. So that was 3 o'clock Monday afternoon. Got home about 4 o'clock and met with Mike Moreland, who was on the board at the time, was our marketing guy. Went to his house, and we were up all night. Did not sleep that night to get all posters pulled, media, advertising, everything pulled of David Lee Murphy, and trying to get a new person booked within 48 hours to get somebody out here, which was a feat. I mean, it was just, I don't know how we got it done still. But we were up. That was one of my first all-nighters besides college. But we were up all night trying to find somebody. The next day, by 2 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, we found an artist, Love and Theft, that came, and thank God we flew him into Seattle, and we still kept the concerts going. So I did not want to give up, and because we were building this thing, and the challenges of, I think we can talk about the challenges of the arena, and bringing that stage into the arena and the cleanup. We were starting to hit those challenges because of just timing. I mean, when you're getting done with slack at 1 o'clock, and you're bringing a whole stage in for production to do a concert at 8 o'clock. That is a lot of work. And I got to tell you, the top hands, they just came through and did it. And they put up fences and signs and boundaries and 21 and under and bars. And that, I mean, these guys flat did it. And but it got to a point is, we're getting done at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning and wearing people out on Thursday night into a strong weekend of rodeo. So it's like, okay, we got to make a little change here. And so that's when we decided. It was in our meetings in Las Vegas. I wrote up a little napkin, and the idea was to expand Behind the Chutes, make it bigger, because I had ran that in 2013 and 14, and Behind the Chutes is getting small, because of the amount of people that we hold in there. I'm like, what if we make Behind the Chutes bigger, double the size, double the stage, so I meet the requirements that the artists need for square footage, because the stage is expensive to rent. It's, I think, about stage lights and everything's about $18,000. So if we can spend the money on the stage and Behind the Chutes and making it a better experience and not have to rent, and so that was kind of the idea last year, expanding Behind the Chutes. Now we can, I don't know, Andy, what do we can fit, 2,100 legally, somewhere in there, and so I don't know if you guys have been in Behind the Chutes in the last year. It's quite a change. And so, concerts are very competitive. We have to watch, watersheds within, we can't book an artist that's playing within 45 days and a certain amount of miles from us. So you have all these rules. And so when Watershed started coming out with all these big artists, that narrows up who we can hire real quick. But so the idea with Behind the Chutes is we get it out of the arena with us bringing in the best of the best, roping in on Wednesday, and all our slack events. We was getting too tight to hold that concert in the arena and keep everybody alive. So, I mean, it was a long night. So decided to put it in Behind the Chutes, and it was last year was the first year with Claire Dunn and Chancey Williams. And Chancey Williams just found out, last week he'll be making his Grand Ole Opry debut next 2 weeks. So, talk about a guy that we may have seen him at his beginning of his prime. He's the only other artist cowboy other than Chris Ledoux to both sing and compete at the Cheyenne Frontier Days. So he is a real singing cowboy. So trying to bring, that real country music back into this thing. This year, being our 100th, we have a lot of expectations, right? What are we doing, right? So the idea of events throughout the weekend is to honor generations of our past. And so Sawyer Brown came up as a top 90s country band. So Sawyer Brown will be headlining. But I'd love to have George Strait. I did send him a message, by the way. He has not responded by messenger. So I invited him to our wedding too, but so Anyway, we did make we made an offer on Cody Johnson and some other people, but Cody's headlining at Watershed, so that takes him out of the game. I have another artist, and I was really, really hoping I'd have it done today. I'm 88% there, but I can't say who it is. But it is a younger artist, so we're going to be appeasing to all generations. So this young man is a 2020s up-and-comer big time. So we're going to have two headliners that'll appease that younger crowd and the older crowd for our 100th. So it's been a ride. It's been a fun. I got to meet a lot of people doing these things. It's and they're real people. They got real stories. Wade Jennings, just talking about his grandpa. Just listen to old Waylon. I grew up on that. My dad rodeoed it all the time when I was growing up. Glenwood and Bickleton. I remember Waylon Jennings playing over the loudspeakers, and so for that bringing somebody back that has that heritage, it was pretty awesome. But the booking part's fun, isn't it, Joel?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We were very fortunate because none of us had the ability to go on Facebook and book somebody, but booking was a challenge, and we went through 2 booking agencies. The last one we had was Bob Romeo, who used to produce the CMA Awards. Mm-hmm. And anyway, he was a really dedicated guy, and the way we approached hiring was if we were going for 2 acts, we'd try and go get a Horizon act, which is a new and up and coming. One of our very most successful concerts was a gal named KT Oslin, and she just happened to have a hot record going when that booking took place, and we were able to get her for not a high amount of money, and it turned out to be probably the most profitable concert we had. But booking was something tough, and then if you get somebody from the Horizon category, then you'd go after Glenn Campbell or the Oak Ridge Boys or somebody like that to pick up that fade to black kind of deal. So it is tough.
I think a good example would be Tim McGraw. So when you booked him, you did it on a share deal. Now, Tim McGraw, if you wanted to book him, he'd be $750,000 as a base.
Yeah, everybody used to come to us, and I'm sure they come to you and, how come you don't get Garth Brooks, or how come you
George
don't
Strait,
get
$1 million, and he's got a requirement.
Yeah, yeah. We'll put him on in the pasture somewhere, Anyway, it was tough business and a very, very risky business, and really that's the reason I think the Ellensburg Rodeo during my period on the board decided too risky. And Kenny Peterson and I got together and did the math, and we actually came out of the red and into the black with Chris Ledoux back to back, and we ended up after 13 concerts in that series, $1,850 in the black. And these concerts were, when you put production together with the acts themselves and all the ancillary things that take place, promotion, that sort of thing, we were averaging anywhere between $40,000 and $70,000 a night expenses. And our seating capacity was somewhere around 2,500. So it's very comparable to what you're doing now. And yours is going to probably even be more intimate than ours was, but ours was pretty intimate. And but it's risky business, and congratulations, buddy.
That part has, financially has been good for us. I mean, it's we haven't lost any money. We've been making money. We've had some really good sponsors, Corona and Legends, and this year Brian Stickney has really upped some money for us. He wanted to have a good celebration for the 100th for the community, so he's helping us out, which is great. So we've had really good sponsors, but honestly, the ticket sales cover the cost of the artist. Where you make your money is on the beer. Yeah, yes, beer sales, and that's where the profit is. And the more beer they drink, the the funner it gets, right?
Yeah, our concerts were dry, by the way. Water, anybody? No, does anybody have any questions or memories or anything about anything we've said tonight? Mike, you were telling me there might be somebody here whose dad was in the cowboy band? Oh, Sean. Yeah. That's great. What years was he in the band?
Sean, can I have you introduce yourself on the microphone? Is that okay?
Photos, it looks about 1936 to 38.
Okay. Yeah, my dad was the director then. Yeah.
And he's in the photos that I sent to you, Mike. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah. Thank you.
Some of the top hands have to have good stories back here.
I saw Rick's hand. I'm going to go to Rick.
A different bunch there now, but a guy named Gary Gaunter was the music guy at Puyallup, and he was on the board forever. And these rodeos, these big rodeos, Cheyenne included, are all supported by the music that they bring. The rodeo, the crowds come for the music as much more than they come for the rodeo. There are true rodeo fans that come to the rodeo. But you watch Houston, San Antonio's Austin's going on right now. The rodeo ticket is actually part of the concert ticket. That's why when you watch the bareback riding, which is traditionally the first event of a rodeo, there's hardly anybody in the facility. But by the time you get to the barrel race and the bull riding, the place is packed, and that's because the concert is going to start after the rodeo. Puyallup, Gary would tell me that they would make around $3 to $5 million profit off of their concerts, which was what supported the rodeos. And all the big rodeos do that. You watched San Antonio, and you would see in the background this huge stage that they were going to pull into the middle of the arena. And Cheyenne has an even bigger stage that comes in with pulled in by tractors. It sets up in about 20 minutes, and it's huge. And it's parked outside the arena. You can see it if it's at the empty end of the arena. But that's how rodeos make their money nowadays, is the concerts, and typically Western concerts. I have a little story to tell on Joel, though, because he was talking about when Kenny Peterson and Brad Fitter were running the spotlights. And Joel you mentioned that he went up there and gave them some coaching. Well, a lot of you probably don't know that he actually ran a spotlight for Pink Floyd in Zaire and was standing over the ring when Frazier and Ali fought.
Well, it wasn't Pink Floyd, by the way.
Oh, it was
in Zaire.
Yeah,
Which is the Belgian Congo. I got to go to that with a lighting crew from London. And anyway, it was James Brown, the Pointer Sisters, and those people. A lot of Motown people were there. It was 3 days of concerts prior to the fight. Yeah, I did the lights for the fight. I had a spotlight right above the arena or the ring. Yeah, it was held in a soccer stadium in Kinshasa.
it was actually Foreman. Then Joel and I actually met in the Sahara Casino. He's a big guy. He's bigger than you can imagine. He's 6'4", easy, and a huge guy. And he was that year they had all of the heavyweight world champions. In the Sahara, we saw Kenny Norton and George Foreman, and Ali wasn't there, but Frazier was there. And so we're walking back to our room at an hour I won't disclose, and Foreman's walking ahead of us with his little entourage, and Joel said, just right behind him, he says, the last time I saw you was in Zaire, and Foreman stopped dead in his tracks and turned around. And here's this cowboy sitting there, and then he talked about that experience of Zaire, and then they traded hats.
Yeah. His hat, my hat sat on his head like this. It was like It's like the little monkey that rides the, It was hilarious, and I put his on that came over my ears. Yeah, it was a great experience.
I would just comment and following Rick's observation is we travel around with rodeos quite a bit in the different cultures in the different areas of the country. We would always make the comment that in the South, they don't have a rodeo unless there is a concert afterwards, because the concert is the draw. And in the Northwest, in our area, they don't have a concert unless there's a rodeo, because the rodeo is the draw in our area.
Yeah, it's
And that really
basically
stays.
the big rodeos. That's the ancillary part of the whole event. In Ellensburg, the concert was the ancillary activity, and so it's a kind of a reverse of roles. But of course, that was then. Yeah.
Why couldn't that be switched? You know, given what Rick said, what's to stop Ellensburg from headlining somebody? And those other rodeos had to start that one day. So why couldn't we do that here?
And that's a good question. It's something we were wanting to build to, and maybe still a goal. And it's a very competitive market now with Watershed and what Seattle's doing. And you have these artists. The problem is when you're booking artists and they cannot play within a certain amount of distance in a certain amount of time, and so that narrows your window real quick. Could be done if you book them faster than what Watershed and willing to pay more than what they want to do.
Thinking out of the proverbial box, could you go out a couple years and start looking?
Oh yeah, it's kind of funny. Nashville, so they take December off, and so I usually will start about right after rodeo, October, to try and find somebody. And the goal has always been to book somebody in January and have it ready to announce during the coronation banquet. But this year, in every year is different. This year they're facing a lot of travel expenses. So if we lived in Texas or Nashville, you'd have these artists, coming around, routing is what they call it. Well, we're out here in a PNW, so we got to fly these guys in, and they're just not coming through. So it's I'm not saying it can't be done. It's just a little more challenging because of the dynamics of other venues. George Strait is a good example. He's playing in Seattle. Was it in June, I believe, and has a huge amount of. It's a lot of money that we'd have to front up for something like that. It'd be a blast. I'd love to do it. Rick voted no. Everybody else is going to do yes, but he's kind of a pansy that way. But we are in the entertainment business, Rick. Can you imagine rodeo without music? Yeah, that first bull that bucks out, if it comes out there and AC/DC isn't playing, it ain't going to sound right. Right?
That's what Gogi actually started.
Mm-hmm.
He started that.
Yeah, it really was a transition, and we just happened to meet him in Denver when we used to have the committee meetings down there, and he was a friend of Miles Hare's, and Miles was one of our bullfighters that year, and so we invited him to come to the rodeo, and next thing you know, he was our sound man for almost 10 years. Yeah, it was a change in music, especially in Ellensburg, because it was ridiculous before him. It was numbers for
I should add, the music and behind the chutes has changed quite a bit. We used to, probably 10 years ago, just have one artist play the whole time, the whole weekend. Well, that artist, their voice would be toast by Saturday, and you can only play so many songs. So we started bringing multiple bands in, a different band every night. So Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, and Monday. So there's Andy's are 6 different bands coming in. So the arrangement of music that is hitting Ellensburg Rodeo now, just the behind the chutes, the free part of it is huge. And we probably get hit up by, 100 bands a year probably right now. I mean, every PNW band wants to play in Ellensburg. This is a starting point. We've had, 7 years ago, we had Taylor Lynn play here, so Loretta Lynn's granddaughter. So we've had some big artists that have gone on. Jessie Gergen, she tours with Gretchen Wilson now. She played here. She played at the Springwood party before it switched to Sweetwater. This year, Claire, she opened Thursday night, and she's going to come back because she loved Ellensburg so much. She's going to play our Sunday night party at Sweetwater. So, yep, she's at the top, man.
And it all started with the Twang Babies.
I thought you were going to say with the wrestlers, but
Mary Subert. I want to go back to two things. First of all, early in the Behind the Chutes, when it originally started, a lot of the directors were the ones collecting the money, and the top hands were just starting. And I was a commissioner at the time, and I've got people with me from the State Liquor Control Board, and we are walking the grounds, check, check, check. And I get behind the chutes, and where the directors, there were two different places they were taking money. They didn't have the coins yet. You didn't get that token. Money was on the ground in front of the stand, behind, in their pockets, on their hats. They were so busy selling the beer that they couldn't get rid of the money fast enough. And the Liquor Control Board was like, can you say something to these gentlemen? Oh, yeah, I did, immediately. And I think you were in charge of Behind the Chutes, weren't you? No. I don't know who was. It was pretty hilarious. The other thing, Joel mentioned that we had done the catering for the concerts. And I remember Bill coming home and saying, oh, there's going to be concerts, and you're going to cater. It wasn't we, it was you. The first three or 4 years, it was when we still had the old grandstand before the new metal one was built. We fed the band, the road crew, etc. We didn't have enough room to feed them. It was above where the announcer stand was, so it was a spot maybe like the length of this, and we'd have like 40 to 60 to feed, so they'd come in shifts. Well, my dear neighbor, the late Janet Riggs, and I would cook for a week, and on Saturday, Joe Riggs would stay home, and he'd be putting things in and out of the oven and putting them in warming ovens, and so we had enough food to feed everybody. Well, the last year we were in that part of the grandstand, Dave Standish, who was on the board, comes up and he said, you're feeding all these people, and we directors aren't getting any time to eat dinner. Okay, Dave. So the next year, when the new grandstand was built, we moved out to a tent where we fed breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And Carrie, I don't know if you have to do all that, but we had breakfast was so many of this, so many of that, so many of this. Lunch had to be between the hours of 11 and 2, and that was not the concert stars wouldn't eat. It was mostly road crew at that time. And they would all come in. We'd send Meg out to the golf course then because it was easier to get. Somebody in town didn't think I should be catering because they had a business in town, and I was taking time away from their restaurant. So we'd send Meg out to the golf course where she'd pick up whatever the lunch was, the various sandwiches on various breads, very particular about what they got. And then dinner, Bruce Harris, who has the pasta company with his wife Joanne, and he was working for Bar 14, and he'd never done catering. And so Bill says to Bruce, we need somebody to cater. So we talked to Jim Kraft, and then Bruce does our dinner for us. So that was his start in the restaurant business outside of just working at Bar 14. But as time progressed and concerts ended, we got to meet some of the stars we would meet, but it was mostly just the road crew that came.
John?
So I have a question probably for the both of you guys. I'm not asking to name any names or throw anybody under the bus, but you always hear of the stars and the talent wanting certain things. whether it's favorite food or pop or the way they're greeted or anything like that? Any stories and still protecting the innocent by
I can
changing
give you a
names?
real
maybe?
good one. Maybe Bridget, you want to tell this one?
I'm not even sure how much he's going to say here, but so they have in the contract, like Mary was saying, they have to be catered to and have so many things. They have to have certain types of alcohol, certain types of pop, certain types of candy, like all of that, a green room, everything. Well, they always want face towels for, I don't know, wipe their makeup off or something. And so I just go get the cheapest ones, the white ones or whatever. And then I brought those back, and he was like, no, we can't have white ones. They have to be brown ones. So then I went down and grabbed brown ones, come back. No, we don't want brown ones. Those are the wrong fabrics. You got to have these ones. And so they're just, they're
not all that way, just he was. So,
he was like that. And then it was, actually, this is kind of funny. So my boss is screaming at me. Is it too loud? So my boss was the Secretary of State, Kim Wyman, former Secretary of State. And she was in the gold buckle room with me, and we were visiting. And we look out onto the patio, and Wade Jennings' crew's out there smoking marijuana before it was legal. And so I'm like, they can't be smoking that out there. And she's like, oh my gosh, I feel really bad. Like, should I go say something? I'm like, well, you don't have to say anything. Like, you're really not working right now. And she goes, I know, but I'm the Secretary of State. Like, I feel like I should go say something. And so we're fighting over who should say something, because I'm like, well, it's my husband's problem, not mine. Like, do we care that they're smoking out there? And then thank God, Dave Adams comes walking in, and we're like, he's smoking marijuana. And he goes, do you want me to say something? We're like, of course we do. Like, so he went out. So the band members are really fun, but there's a lot of stories there.
Oh,
so I would ask Carrie, though, to, I don't know if you're supposed to or not, but maybe say something about the list of artists and the price and how you determine, like we were showing Michael this week.
I actually dealt with Romeo for a couple of years, and they'll provide you a list, artist list, and their price range. So, you can throw out a name right now, and I can give you kind of idea what they are. So you build a budget, what you think you can sell ticket-wise, and then you try and find an artist in that price range. And then the challenges are they already booked somewhere else? Are they not in the area? I mean, there's just a lot of challenges to that booking part, and then trying to figure out what our community wants to hear. Is it old country? I think, so far our most ticket sales have been Joe Diffie of the years that I've been on the board and involved. Ned Ledoux is very close in total sales to that, but so it kind of shows to me, that old country is what our community wants to hear. So hence why Sawyer Brown's coming, and the soon to be named artist will be really good. So
Kind of the Subers did such a good job with, they separated all the red M&Ms out of the M&M packets because they didn't want any red M&Ms. But the biggest issue that I had, and most of our artists rolled in buses, and was who got to park where. And my policy was whoever gets there first can park wherever they dang well please, And that caused a little riff amongst the opener and the closer, But that was the only really issue I had with the riders. They're called a rider. You get your contract, that's all financial. And you get all the demands on a rider that comes with the contract. And but actually, we didn't have to go through any Wade Jennings things. Probably the only disappointment, and Carrie brought this up about hiring a group or a personality that you particularly like. And I hired Rodney Crowell, who I thought was one of the great songwriters and also gifted musician and vocalist. And that was probably the smallest crowd we ever had. And, taught me a big lesson. Don't book the people that you like, you know. But that choosing, right, Carrie, choosing bands, you've got your list. Mm-hmm. But to make it something that, because our concerts are local, no matter how you look at it. When we moved from Saturday to Thursday, we knew that these are going to be local concerts or regional, but we're not going to get a bunch of people from Seattle. We might have had them there on a Saturday night, but that was impossible to get to pull off. So, yeah. Well, that changed a lot. We didn't have an event then. But anyway, our riders went pretty smooth.
You know, one of the things I think I forgot to mention is moving it into behind the chutes. Wanted to get away from just that stadium experience. You know, maybe if you're at Seattle or Watershed, to have an intimate experience in behind the chutes. So you can be in there, you know, this year if you want to go up and see Mark Miller right up front, dance with him, you can. You know, not very many venues will you be able to get that intimate experience and something different than these other venues. So that was kind of the idea amongst getting out of the arena, because we have so many events in the arena now. I think we have Paul Woodside had something he wanted to add on the top end side. I see the smoke.
I didn't.
You got to have a good setup story.
No, I'm coming over anyway.
You know, as I sit here and think about what you're talking about, you know, all these artists are just normal people. They're just down-to-earth people, and they're fun to talk to and be around. And so that's one thing that my experience is with these artists. They're mostly all great people. So
I've got one here too, Bridget.
I just want to say, out of everybody in this room, like, we all know what volunteers are. Like, we've all, in one way or another, we have all volunteered. And it's either rodeo weekend or getting prepped for it. But I do have to say, like, the rodeo board is fantastic about promoting their volunteers and all the groups that help them, but they are not very good about promoting themselves. And they do, the rodeo board and the top hands, they work all year long. Like Carrie was saying, I'm sure Joel did, they start right after rodeo, getting ready for the next one. And it sounds fun going to Las Vegas and the finals rodeo, but they don't tell you that they have to go like Sunday or Monday, and then they're in meetings Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then they get a party when everybody shows up on Wednesday night or Thursday. But all of their vacation time and all of the time that they put into all of this, they're volunteers too. They don't get free tickets to the rodeo to hand out. It's all volunteers. And so I just want to point that out to everybody, because we all volunteer. The rodeo board and the top hands, it's year long, and they give up a lot with family and time.
You're on, Daniel. Oh.
Estelle Johnson and I worked hand in hand with Joel with all the early concerts, and we spent many hours starting at 6 o'clock one morning and working all day and all night, and we usually left there about 4 in the morning and then got ready for everything we needed to do for rodeo. But when he was talking about parking, as all of the people would come in, I can remember a couple fights, well, not fights, but mouths back and forth with some of the people wanting to park their vehicles. And like he said, they came in buses, but we also provided a motorhome or something for part of them. And there was one group that came in who didn't think the motorhome or that we had provided, it was beautiful, but they didn't think it was to their standard, and they were real happy. But we got it taken care of, didn't we, Joel? but I had to laugh. I just have so many fond memories of all the years that we worked together on concert. And I had to laugh. I was telling everybody here, when Martina McBride was here, she had her newborn baby with her. And my son, who was also on the stage crew, they had their little boy there, and she had a little girl. And she told all of us all weekend that when the two of them grew up, they were going to be married. She'd see to it. Of course, it didn't happen, but I just have so many funny stories. There was one of them who was quite demanding, but she basically took everything out on her crew. She would finish her song, walk over to the steps to get down out of the back into the back end, and she would just scream and holler at her road crew for not having her cigarette lit and ready for her when she was there. And I just kind of stood there and went, oh, wow. But we were really very lucky he put me in charge of the backstage crew. And at that time, I had, my boys had just graduated from high school. I had nephews and a lot of family and their boyfriend, all their friends. So we had a good backstage crew put together with all the boys who had graduated from Ellensburg High and from Kittitas. I just have so many fond memories of the many years that I got to work with Joe. It was always a lot of work, as at that time I was the parade chairman, and I did the parade for 18 years, and we'd finish and leave at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then I was on to my next duty. But what a great opportunity that we as top hands were volunteers, but you work and you have fun and you get to enjoy all of the fun of the weekend. Thanks, Joel.
Thank you, Estelle.
I think, is there any other stories that you've been waiting in the whole time? I think we'll say thank you. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you for our speakers for sharing those stories and the expertise that they had. Thank you, top hands, directors, for the work you guys have put in through the years of entertaining us. Yep. Thank you for all that work that you put in. Thank you for sharing the stories. I wanted to mention Alexis. Thank you for being here, Queen Ellensburg. Yep. And I wanted to mention also Alan. Thank you for being here. Alan was our speaker last time in February. Yep. Thank you very much. Alan's, I think I'm saying this accurately, I think the video of your presentation was posted. It's available on YouTube on the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame Facebook page. So we've had the January and February speaker series are available, posted online, and this series will be posted available soon. So anyone who's not here, direct them to it because it was good stories. Yep.
How about a big hand for Daniel for putting this series together? This is very special because it's going to go logged into the history of the Ellensburg Rodeo. And thank you, Daniel, for all your work.
No, thank you. With that, I guess come see us next month. Be same time, same place, same. The next month the topic is the view from the chutes. So we'll have contestants. What's the contestant experiences like? Okay.